Go ahead. It's time to talk comics. Oh yeah, yeah, that's stuff. Go ahead. Yes. It's time to talk comics. Oh yeah, yeah, that's stuff. Yes. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's me. I'm Manny draws and I draw. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. That's me. I'm Manny draws and I draw. uh. Oh, he's buffing stuff. That's for sure. Yeah. Oh, he's buffing stuff. That's for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is me, the writer, bragging about my own work, because I need you to read it because you would love it. That's just the truth. Manny, have anything else you want to say about Renowned?
Renowned is awesome. I drew it. Kevin wrote it. It's available physical copies. If you want to support us, you let us know. Shoot us a message. We'll send a book to you. Still coming up with stuff. Putting the band together. Making some cool stuff in the near future. Yeah, it's a project we've been working on for a bit, and we plan to keep growing. Honestly, so
And both there's Manny on my stream as well. So yeah, we're proud of this work. We would love for you all to read it because we had a lot of fun making it.
mm-hmm.
All right, that's enough for our plugs. Additional plugs for Ben Hill Art. You can read his comic book, The Time Police. It is a lot of fun. That is available on Instagram right now. You also have a Redbubble store. Anything else I'm missing?
Thank you. Part 3 is out now. We're super excited. We've been working on the last part of our first story arc. So you can go out to _Time Police on Instagram and check out what we're posting. We post a page a week. And, it's fitting for it to be Valentine's Day because the Time Police is a total bromance. So go out if you like buddy cop time travel stuff. Come check out our book.
Nice. I really need to go dig up my copy of Time Police that I have. It's just buried in my
Yeah.
box of all my
I
singles.
was literally thinking that too.
I
was
know.
Like, where
I was
is
thinking
it?
that, and I was like, because like most of my belongings are in boxes in the basement.
Yeah.
And like I just unpacked like mostly my big trades and stuff that I knew I would like revisit, but most of my singles are packed away in a different box, to preserve.
Well,
So
I
I'll
I
do my
know
best
there's
to dig that up for the next stream.
yeah, there's lots of I'm glad you guys have those. There's a part two that we have prints of that we're doing it all, you know, uh, on the sly, on the cheap, but there's going to be big news. So I would say pinch your pennies between now and mid March, because we are going to be really excited to announce our ability to do a full printed book. So as gorgeous as Renowned looks, we would love to do something, uh, you know, just as pretty. So everybody can have a full comprehensive first issue of Time Police. So stay tuned.
Nice.
Hell yeah! And Sam posts his sculptures and art on Instagram. Do you post them anywhere else?
Oh, he does have
Really,
an
Sam?
imprint store. So
He does.
He does.
Sam,
I believe you
are
can
you here?
find it. He's muted right now, but I think you can.
He's muted.
I'm dumb. I'm
okay.
dumb. I'm not. I'm not a pro streamer. Unlike these three gentlemen. Yeah. So I'm very active on Instagram, but you can find my website at Sam T Lamb, which also links to my imprint. But the hook with comics is these guys have completely gotten me hooked on trying to do fan art of comics, and I'm specifically focused on doing some Murder Falcon right now. So if you follow me on IG and follow my stories, you will see my progress. I'm not gonna lie, I'm actually on the other monitor, fucking with the Chuck Taylors right now.
Nice.
But I will
Nice.
focus. I will focus on our conversation when we start.
Oh, you're good. We're just happy to have you here. Yeah, right on. And as always, the easiest way to get in touch with any of us and talk to us about stuff, find our links, all of that, is to just join our Discord. The Mouthbreathers Guild. It should be linked to my profile. To be linked on the Manny Draws profile. Who, let me get that up here, right up here. He is up here in this stream, also concurrently streaming. So go check out the Manny Draws on Twitch, y'all.
Yeah.
Let's talk bad weekend. This is our second week in a row of the Brubaker and Phillips world. I can't believe Ben, and I'm assuming Sam, have been unacquainted with Brubaker and Phillips for this long. I'm glad we got to do Pulp last week, but this book is also rad, very reasonable in size, so hopefully that leads to a reasonably length stream. But who knows? We're capable of anything.
Well, I have to say, you had me last week with Pulp. So if everybody missed Pulp last week, go back, watch Manny, watch Kev's streams on that. Pulp was, I loved Pulp. For us to start with Ed and Sean on that book, I was just like, oh my gosh. Well, now I'm excited about Bad Weekend. So I jumped right into Bad Weekend, and I have to say it was a completely different experience than my experience with Pulp. But we will definitely get into more of my thoughts on this book versus what we covered last week.
Yeah, and I do want to mention too, before we get into it, we talked about how Sean Phillips has been cartooning since like he was like 12 or however old he was, right? But Ed Brubaker, he was a cartoonist before too. Before he got like super big, he did his own stuff. He wrote it, he lettered it, he cartooned it, and it's called Low Life. And you might be able to find that out in the wild somewhere if you dig deep enough, maybe. But I think that's an interesting thing to think about too, because he's a writer, which is, great skill to have, of course, but he's also a cartoonist. He's thinking like a cartoonist. He's thinking about the words on the page. He's thinking about the compositions. He may not be talking to Sean about the compositions similar to Alan Moore. Alan Moore was also a cartoonist before he started diving deep, and then he just committed to being a writer. So, but yeah, he's coming.
It's funny that you,
Oh.
I think it's funny that you mentioned that too, because I was just like listening to him talk about his comics with Sean Phillips and how he's actually had to dial that part back in himself to write and direct on the page a lot less with his scripting.
Yeah.
Because when you have like an artist like Sean Phillips who's just willing to just like churn out pages, like he's just a page a day workaholic.
Yeah.
Like the best of them. Like you don't really have to give this guy that much direction. Like just tell him who's on the page and what they're saying and where they are, and basically he's going to cover it and do it however he wants, which I think is interesting because you know Ed Brubaker has not drawn his own book in 30 years.
Yeah, it's been a while. It would be cool to get like a revamp or something of that, but you know that's wishful thinking, of course. But coming in thinking like that, he's also a big fan of comics, obviously, and when we go through this book, there's a lot of deep dives, a lot of backstories, like, you know, legendary tales of like old heads and stuff, like Alex Toth, Alex Raymond, what's his name, Stan Drake, especially. There's
even Jack Kirby gets a name drop.
Jack Kirby gets definitely a whole lot of name drops in here. Will Eisner, even he's in like a panel, I'm pretty sure, as well. But
yeah,
he's going into these stories, like especially the Alex Raymond story, which we'll get to it when we get to it, but it involves a car crash and it involves someone else in the same
Archie
car.
Lewis, was also a part of that.
Yes,
Yeah.
but he's just flipped. He changed the names on that, which I think is interesting. It's like his take on that story, but he changed the names, so it's cool to think.
And I want to throw out there just before because I see you're going through things on the stream, Kev. You know, we talked about this a lot with Pulp. It's of course Ed Brubaker writing. It's Sean Phillips drawing. But we also have Sean's son Jacob once again doing the colors. And so one thing that I just absolutely loved about Pulp were the different ways that they used color in that book. This one, I was very shocked. I was thinking, oh my gosh, we got the same creative team. I can't wait to see some of the creativity. And I have to say it was much more it was much more of a comic book. Like I didn't feel the expression as much in some of the colors until I went back through and read it a second time. And then I'm like, there's so much mood that Jacob is able to set by muting a lot of the colors.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that as we go through it, I think that's one thing I'm really impressed with is, you know, you could easily just throw colors on a page like, we're in a bar, you're going to have wood tones and everything like that. The fact that you see so much of this really muted and toned down just helps with how gritty and how real some of the story is. So that's something I really paid attention to, just knowing how much I love Jacob's colors on Pulp.
Oh, dude, he's so good.
Absolutely. And it's a lot of the same techniques employed. Like even just on this first page, these like heavy textured brushes, but with these like really messy kind of blends of colors where there's things just kind of slapped together, like, and colors like overrunning the lines. And like I love the way he does close-ups on faces and the kind of the coloring there with these just like shadows, but they're really messy splotches. It's just muted and not as like abstract and like purely expressionist.
Yeah, something to dovetail on that. Something that really jumped out at me was I'm assuming this is Ed who's doing the inking, right?
Sean Phillips.
If the pages, but so consistent with the kind of the color and the texture being very splotchy and very, I don't even want to say simplistic, but just very minimalist
raw.
and muted. Yeah, raw is a great adjective. So is the inking, right? But like it's like I kept bookmarking all these pages where I was like, oh my god, I need to steal this. Just the use of very broad brushstrokes to capture the Terminator, of certain shadows, and then on the other side dropping a darker value. There's something. This reminds me a lot of like Scott McCloud's book, Understanding Comics, of just like as we just like thinking of how comic artists and visual artists in general, how it's like almost like you pull different sliders, you get more or less groundedness, and you have these pretty quite mundane. I say mundane, and that's not a pejorative, but just a very this is a book about comics. So it's a comic about comics and about the industry, and yet it's precisely because of some of these more very raw, like you said, Kevin, very almost very simplistic and direct mark making that for some, like for me, makes it feel very universal. Every page actually felt, I don't know if epic is the right word, but as someone who's an outsider to the industry but like has a lot of love for people within it and is like continue to be fascinated as I learn more about it, the entire industry feels kind of epic to me. You know, there's this like weird arc of, it feels almost esoteric because comics are, I think comics have there's quite a bit of life in them now, but they, comics as such to me still feels like the purview of like esoteric beings and like the ancillary stuff that's come out of comics, you know, the video games, the movies, right? That's very mainstream. But comics per se is still this very like, I don't know, reading this it really felt like I was being given this almost sacred glimpse into like a history of an industry that I don't know that much about.
Yeah.
Totally. I think that like comics are already such a niche, and like this level of history and like intense legend is like an even bigger niche within the niche, because like people truly like their comics are weird in that not everybody who enjoys them has a reverence for the history in the way that certain fans of other mediums would. Like film, for example. Like you don't get a lot of like the stereotypical film bro who's like, oh, do you know Truffaut, and like, do you know like whatever Citizen Kane, but like it's rare that like comic fans, even people who are pulling like from their pull list every week, every month, are gonna want to talk about guys like Archie Lewis or like Stan Raymond or whoever. Um, yeah, and so I think like Ed just being that level of nerd about it and wanting to drudge all that up is really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, here's a Joe Kubert and Will Eisner and Al Williamson like plug right there because they're supposed to be on the panel with this guy.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, this book is one thing like in a broad kind of picture, just with Brubaker books that I was realizing I love them. I read them obsessively. They don't make you feel good. Like I get a rush after I read them because they're a great story, but they almost always make me feel dirty and like sad and contemplative.
Yeah.
And I mean that, I guess, in like the most respectful way possible.
Yeah.
Because that means I really did feel something like physical.
Oh yeah.
Which means it's great art. But
I do want to say, like, going off of that, this book is basically about a young artist observing his like pessimistic, like burnt out mentor. You know, this I feel like this guy is kind of a collection of like a whole bunch of cartoonists that have gotten screwed over, that have just like said F you to the industry kind of thing. And there's been a lot of stories about Alex Toth kind of being that guy in a way, sadly enough. But I feel like this character, his name's Hal, right?
yeah, Hal Crane.
Hal Crane. I feel like he's kind of...
What a great name.
It is a great name.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I feel like Ed is writing this guy, putting in all of that history from Alex Toth and other cartoonists that have had it bad, especially Jack Kirby. And he talks about that in an interview, and I feel like he just puts like that weight, and then also the Alex Raymond story of Alex Raymond driving his like what's Stan Drake's convertible into a car or a tree or whatever, and there's all this speculation and stuff about that history. Is like maybe he was suicidal, maybe this, but no one really knows. But actually, Dave Sim, the guy that did Cerebus, he's actually made a book about that. Anyway, deep dive into history. Ed Brubaker is just like obsessed with this stuff, super nerdy about it, and of course, like that feeling of not, it's not a happy story, but this is like seeing it through the lens of, this guy used to be optimistic about his cartooning, and then all this shit just happened to him, getting screwed over by publishers. He's in the car with his buddy, bad things happen, and now we're at where we are at, so it's interesting.
I am curious What you just captured, Manny, was like a huge thing that echoed through as I was looking through the book, and again to people listening, like I still gotta finish it, but I have a question for you guys as people who are in comics. Is how do I put this? Like connecting with my experience as a visual artist, I have had these moments, and Manny, I think that you understand this, where it's like I get kind of I just want to do the art,
Yeah.
but I have to do it in a particular milieu with a particular set of circumstances, including historical circumstances, right? Like the industry that has come up in front of me that I'm entering, and I'm entering very weirdly as well, right? Like as someone who has this like very fancy day job as a lawyer, granted in entertainment, so that's actually quite relevant. But using the tools of the space and getting caught up in, fortunately I haven't really been caught up in drama, but I could imagine, like, I don't know, let's just make up something that is very realistic that probably it happens to people we know, where like you do work for some team where there's like political drama and then you get pulled into it and then that ends up like sitting like staying with you. It's like, oh, you used to work for, you know, in whatever, somewhere in some studio or something. And I'm just curious about, this is a very big question for you guys, but reading this book, like, how, simply put, how did it make you feel? Like, in the context of, like, how does it make you feel as people who are just creatives and artists, but you have to confront the simple, mature reality of that you have to do it in a particular space?
I think it like there's a documentary about cartoonists and comics and the transition from newspapers to webcomics and how like newspapers was like the big thing of like making your money being a cartoonist, and then webcomics came along and like blew that out of the water while newspapers were dying. And a lot of those guys, a lot of those old dudes were like, I just want to do the art, you know. But the guys that were smart about it, like what's his name, Bill Watterson, uh, you know, he was able to keep the rights. He was able to do a whole bunch of stuff and serialize his book and everything. He was kind of a businessman in a way, especially Will Eisner. He was another guy that was a businessman. Like they they come at it as a mentality of like, I can do the art. I may not be the best artist in the world, but I'm gonna do what I can. But I'm also gonna learn how the business works and how I can benefit future me. And a lot of people come at it like, I just want to draw. I'll do whatever. And then they get screwed over. And then they get screwed over again. And then they get screwed over again because they just don't want to learn the business part of it. They don't want to sit there and negotiate. They don't want to, they just want things handed to them. But it's like that's the way you get bad deals. You have to think smart about your time. Like it's going to take hours to finish a book. It's going to take days to finish a book, right? So you got to be smart about your time. You got to value your time and be smarter about your decisions. You're going to make a lot of mistakes on the way, of course, like any business does. But I think having that mindset of always learning and always like having your head on a swivel and pivoting to, if something doesn't work out, boom, you go to the next thing. Now I learned my lesson. Let me like write that down, and then next time I'll have a better contract. I'll write things out better. I'll negotiate better. So just keeping that kind of head on as a student. You're always a student. You're a student until you die, rather than just sitting down and just give me the work. No, don't do that. Like you got to do it all. You got to put on all the hats.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think that like every industry in the arts is like really predicated upon you not knowing what is going on and just desperately wanting to be a part of it. And that's kind of like what creates the churn of young professionals, like in any industry in the arts, whether that's like musicians, like Motown musicians signing away their rights to Berry Gordy and like creating, singles that sell millions of records and not seeing a dime off of it. Or if that's, a TV writer writing an episode of The Sopranos or whatever and never getting the credit for that and making the royalties off of it or whatever it is. Like Ed Brubaker even laments that every time he watches the Marvel universe because half of it revolves around Bucky Barnes, the character he like revitalized and created the Winter Soldier, and his like long-standing joke is that he made more money appearing in a cameo appearance in the Winter Soldier movie than he ever did writing and then creating the Winter Soldier.
Oh man.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, and it
That's
drives him crazy. And like that
Yeah.
mentality is like what stuck through here. He even mentioned Brian Michael Bendis because they were contemporaries. Like
Yes.
in their early con days, having those same experiences where they were putting in hundreds of hours of their lives into developing the Marvel universe into what it is today. You know, Bendis largely famous for the Ultimate Spider-Man run,
Yeah.
and like that is what like went on to inform our modern interpretations of Spider-Man. And like, does he really get any of the financial credit for that? No, it's and all of these guys have moved to places like Image or their own like printing houses or working with distributors like Boom or Dark Horse to like put out their books because again, they had to learn the business and take control of it for themselves. Because while it's cool to contribute to the legacy of a character like Spider-Man or the Avengers or whoever, like ultimately you're just gonna get fucked, and like that sucks.
Yep.
And I'll like this is a brief aside, like just like when I was starting screenwriting and I was developing an indie feature for one of my friends and talking through some of the changes in the scripting I was doing and all of the work I was doing for free because it was just for a friend and I was 19. My writing mentor in school just literally went, if I could give you one piece of advice, Kev, it's lawyer the fuck up. These people, these producers, these grimy directors, all they're gonna do your whole life is try to fuck you. So get a lawyer. And I was 19, and I was like, okay, write this down, lawyer. And that's a true story. And so it's hard, you know. But having said all of that, that doesn't like dissuade me at all from pursuing this line of like work and wanting to build my life around this,
Yeah.
this crazy ephemeral fucking art form comic
Yeah.
books. Like,
I mean, I know Ed Brubaker brings up. I think it was in one interview. Might have been off panel or something, or maybe a cartoonist kayfabe. I can't remember. But it's like there's the dudes that like that see how someone else did something, like made their own stories, like published their own stuff, and that was great success. Like, you know, Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird making TMNT or whatever. Someone sees that and is like, that's possible. I could do that. And then they try and make their own thing, you know, and then they make Bones or Bone or whatever, or they
Yeah.
make,
Yeah.
you know, something insane. Like that's an indie property. They make Extremity, you know, they make
The Walking Dead.
they make The
You
Walking
know?
Dead. Yes,
Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's like there's those people, and then there's the people that are like basically the jobbers.
And there's nothing wrong with being a jobber. A paycheck's
No,
a paycheck.
yeah,
Like,
paycheck's a paycheck, of course, but it's just like there's the one that wants to chase and believe in the thing that they're making, you know, and wants to make a legacy of their own, versus just handing people free ideas, basically.
Right. And I have to say the one thing, just getting into the story itself, what I love is you start off the story with the, you know, the nighttime setting. It kind of sets up the plot. You've got the main guy who's going to end up following around Hal while he's at this convention. He is a former apprentice or student. You know, his name is Jacob. And he's asked to essentially be Hal's handler for this convention. And it's like, all right, that, you know, he's an older guy, can't be too difficult to rustle. And that's kind of the thing that carries you through is this old guy's got his own way of going about things. But just sticking with the theme of, you know, love for comics, love for what it is that we're doing. I mean, I think, you know, all of us have a passion for this industry, and I really think that is something that we kind of see in the very beginning is just the love for the industry and the fact that Hal makes the comment, you know, comics were practically dead, and now you go to conventions, and there are people dressed up, and there are people going around buying art, buying comics. Like there's such a passion now and love for what people have created, what people are continuing to create, and everything that's going on. And from the book itself, I love all the warm colors when you're at the convention, and the different ways that Sean is able to put his own little twist on specific characters, that it's like, oh, there's a rogue, there's a poison ivy, there's a Wonder Woman, but he does just the little tweaks here. And there are a couple of like stormtroopers, and it's like one of them looks like it has a butt chin.
There's one where
just
like the
a slight
stormtrooper is
tweak.
perfectly obscured, by a panel here, like
Oh
by
yes.
this caption.
Oh, I
thought that
love
was a
it.
great touch, like just enough.
Little things to obfuscate it, right? Just so he can get away, and not get any kind of IP issues
I
or
love
copyright
the,
issues.
even though like this book was put out by Image and they probably had access to the Image licensing, I wanted to find that sequence where he's sitting at the table and the kid asks him to sign the Image like program that they just give away at the con.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like this like kind of Greek messed up version of like Savage Dragon
Yeah.
up here, and it's just the Image Revolution is here, Comic Fest '97, and like apparently like I was listening to in that interview with Brubaker where so backstory on the book was that this was just intended to be 2 issues of Criminal, but then it started to go over so well. Oh, Brock's in the chat. What up, Brock?
What's
Good
up,
to see
Brock?
you. So this was going to just be a lot shorter, but then when they got the approval from the Image editors to release this as one single hardback, they added in a bunch of new scenes into this just to kind of flesh it out, things that got cut.
Yeah.
And one of them was specifically all the stuff at the con table, which is like some of the most integral like shit that ties this all together. And then apparently Image really didn't like the joke about the kid getting him to sign the Image like pamphlet. They were just like, why is that funny? And essentially Brubaker was like, because this is what happened to me. I was like working for DC in the late 90s, and like the only people that came up to sign my shit, like for me to sign their shit, were like little kids just like collecting autographs on a free Image pamphlet, which is like so funny.
It reminds me of the bit that Brian did at Heroes Con where he got that like horrible Funko Pop and just had everyone sign it. It was awesome. Oh god,
Such a good bit. He got some good signatures on there.
he really
too.
did. He got
He
Ed
got like the
Brubaker.
whole Felix crew.
Yeah, he got
Yeah.
Ed
Oh
Piscore
my
and Jim
gosh.
Rugg and stuff. The Felix crew.
That's
Us. Everybody. It was great.
Hey, I didn't get to sign it. That's all.
You
I'm
didn't
saying.
sign it? I thought you signed it.
I didn't sign it.
Oh, man.
No,
Oh.
James and I had a table. We didn't sign.
Damn
Oh,
it.
What about? We missed out. We missed out. But I think that's something that I really love about this book, and I'll sing its praises now, because I feel like Ed and Sean captured what a convention can be in all aspects. You have the amazing fun side of the thing where everybody's dressed up, there's so many people there, there's so much energy and interaction and excitement. And then there are times when you're sitting at your table at a con and you do, just like you pointed out, Kev, like somebody just walks up and be like, I guess, can you sign this, program that they gave me at the door? I've not had the experience of the hipster guy shoving a microphone in my face, asking for an interview, and being a complete jerk. But it's fun to see, just in a short amount of time, just what a convention can be in certain aspects. Because this is really the only time that we spend on the con is like at the very beginning. We get very little of this until we delve into the other side of con life, which deals more in art trading and apparently counterfeit art, which I don't know. Kev and Manny, you guys have listened to conversations with Ed about the book specifically and just in general about his experiences. I didn't know that like counterfeit stuff was such a big deal, and maybe it's probably not so much nowadays, but was back in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
he didn't like name names, but he said there was somebody like a fairly prominent artist who had fallen to all the things that Hal Crane falls into in this book with like alimony payments and gambling debts and alcoholism, was stealing old Stan Lee and Jack Kirby pages from Marvel editors and then selling them on like the aftermarket.
Dude, the art theft, like that was something
Yeah.
too that I was really shocked by. I'm like, well, I guess if you've got access and you've got these kind of things hanging over your head, I could see people being tempted. But then that also makes me really sad because I'm like, no, there's such precious stuff that's probably was sold off for pennies just to, you know, make an alimony payment.
Yeah, I know there was one cartoonist. I can't remember his name, but it was back in the day of like probably like Golden Age or Silver Age, Marvel, and I guess he was supposed to give back his originals or something to Marvel, and his retaliation to that was just like no, and then he started burning his own art just so they couldn't have it, and his daughter. Actually, I know it's in the History of Marvel Comics book, so if you read that, you'll find that scene and know the dude's name. But his daughter, I'm pretty sure, saved a few pages from that, and I feel like that story is referenced in this book, later on, of course. But
It feels just like all of it, like
yeah,
all of
just
those like
everything that
different
he's heard.
stories about like the
Uh-huh.
inside baseball stuff of old Marvel office shenanigans,
Yeah.
like is just kind of twisted up into the life of Hal Crane, like very elegantly, and like in a
Yes.
way that doesn't feel forced.
Yeah, because I know Ed Brubaker talks about like there's that gray area where we have these big giant movies and stuff and all this pop culture events happening now for comics, but then it's like everyone gets to enjoy this and like celebrate it and stuff, but the creators are the ones like getting tortured by it in a way, like Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko, those old guys. Because just recently now Jack Kirby's family is starting to get like compensated for his creations or whatever. They had to go to court to fight it and stuff and be like, hey, my dad kind of like made your company, so.
Yeah, just in case people are curious, comics especially, being like, I don't want to call it an ancient part of entertainment, but it's been around long enough for some of these copyright laws to manifest in really interesting ways. So if I remember correctly, Jack Kirby's estate, his family, what they're invoking is this provision in the Copyright Act, in the U.S. Copyright Act, that states that after, I believe, 50 years, after the artist has passed away, that they can, even if art that was made as work for hire for a company, even if that was valid, that they can withdraw those rights. And it's actually kind of meant for this situation. And they were smart enough to think about it. But there's all this interesting stuff of like, Steamboat Willie going into the public domain.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it should make everyone feel a little bit old because it's like like it's like because a lot of the time periods are anywhere between 50 to 70 to sometimes 100 years, but that much time has passed with a lot of these early IPs, right? So
That's
as a
crazy to
copyright
think
lawyer,
about.
yes, yeah, but so and I think what's cool about it is that you don't need to be a copyright lawyer to understand some of the almost the poetic narrative that undergirds a lot of these legal issues, right? Yes, that it's a legal thing. Yes, you're going to court, but there's a moral quality to it as well. And it's something that I talk when I talk to law students and other students about legal issues. I always say, like, don't forget that when it comes to like things like comics, video games, and art, other forms of art, that we don't just this is not just business, right? Let's not forget, like, this is deeply meaningful quasi spiritual stuff for the people who made it and the people who participate in it as fans, as ourselves creators. And I always think about what is the stewardship that large companies like Marvel or Disney now, what do they have to the IPs that they technically have rights to? Yeah, it's like this as everything about the industry, I think, and I think this book is a good kind of it's a nexus for all of that. Is I love what you guys answered, by the way, earlier to my question about like how does this book make you feel as a lawyer. I always think of like the institutional, historical, and legal issues that, to me, they're not as important as the art. We all recognize that, but they're part of the, I don't want to say game, but they're part of how it happens, right? In
Yeah.
the modern world. And maybe if we're born in 50 years later, if the planet even still exists, it'll be a different set of circumstances. But for now, I think that it's sometimes, I think, being too trusting and too in the clouds doesn't really service anyone, right? Including yourself or your fans.
Yeah.
Like the
Yeah.
Jack Kirby of it all. We love Jack Kirby. Jack Kirby's one of my favorites.
Oh yeah,
One of the goats.
as he should be. Yeah, it's the best.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah.
cool.
He's the king. Long live the king.
So one thing that I was curious about with the book itself is just where are we going to go with this Hal guy? Because to your point, Sam, all the stuff he's created, it's kind of like he didn't have that legal backing. He didn't have the copyright issue, and we see that a lot with the the pirate character and princess character that kind of set up the con thing. But he's also searching for a specific series of pieces that were sold out. Well, they were stolen from him and then sold is kind of the theme here. And so Hal's trying to track that down, but there's a lot of resentment and a lot of just years of hate that Hal has kind of formed for the business itself, which makes me really sad reading this as a person that loves comic books.
Yeah, right.
I don't ever want to feel this way about comic books. I love drawing comic books. I love making art and telling a visual story. So I'm like, man, at least this is a telltale, like a story for me to just always keep it in the back of my mind. Don't become Hal.
Yeah.
Which is
But
like
that's
exactly
kinda what we're
what.
following, right?
That's just funny that you say that because it's exactly what Brubaker and Bendis would say to each
Yeah.
other about the old heads that they see who are just
Yeah.
miserable old drunks at cons
I mean,
with nobody in their signing lines. Like
yeah.
that's a direct quote. I don't want to end up like that guy. I forget which person they were like name, but
I know, because when Ed Brubaker, he was talking about Stan Drake, and the guy in the car with Alex Raymond, he apparently he shared a studio with a guy that studied under Stan Drake, and I guess like the dude was like so miserable and stuff, and just like hated the business or whatever, and in his book he would write, "Don't become Stan Drake." So yeah, I mean, it's a big theme. It's a big theme. Don't be a pessimistic guy. It's okay. Don't be all grumpy and shit.
yeah, I mean that's like, and comics is like, I'm sure this isn't unique to comics, but comics is in this constant state of change, and the old running joke is that comics have always been dying since
Yeah,
1954,
Yeah.
and like, all that sort of stuff. Like, it's entirely how you frame it, how you enjoy it, like what you're getting out of it, and what you're putting into it. So the moral that we're just going to keep circling back to is, if you're going to put your blood, sweat, and tears into something that you're making, you better fucking own it yourself, because these
Yep.
people are going to screw you. They're just going to, that's the Marvel story
Yep.
since its inception, quite literally, with Jack Kirby. So
And DC, when he went to DC, same kind of shit happened too.
Right. Well, and it was happening in DC before Jack, so
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like the two
Bill
guys who
Finger.
created Superman, like both died like broke and penniless and
Yeah.
completely obscure.
Yep.
Bill Finger got completely
Bill
fucked.
Finger for Batman.
Yep.
Oh yeah. And just now, just now they're starting to give credit, so that did him a
Yeah.
lot of good when he was alive. But I guess you can see just from the old hat, from the fact that Ed's drawing from personal experience, and then also the stories that he's heard about the different things that can happen to you if you're not careful with your own creative property. But I absolutely loved Pulp, and I think what I keep going back to is I was so excited to dive into another thing where it's this gritty drama about outlaws and things like that. And Kev, you warned me. It's Bad Weekend. It's about some shady dealings that go on at a comic convention, and I was like, ooh, that'd be kind of cool. I like the thought of this.
Right.
Gritty drama, all circled around here. And I have to admit, like, by the end, while I am not a fan of Hal, and I will constantly remind myself, don't become Hal Crane. Like there's a part in the book where I'm like, all right, Hal finally hopefully got some catharsis after years of what's going on. And then I will have to ask once we get to the end of this, like, what the heck actually happened? Because there's a lot of inference, but I think it's kind of kept nebulous. I draw my own conclusion as to what's going on. But throughout this story, like, you just find that, like, Hal Crane, not a good guy, like, just not good. The fact that he, like, confronts someone in a bathroom, and, like, pistol whips them, and,
Where are my pages?
oh my gosh, like, that was intense. I was just like, all right, well, you're gonna have an old man murder somebody, and, like, gonna have to try to hide him. But it doesn't go that far. But there's a lot of tense stuff, and it kind of does dawn on me. This is a guy that has had a lot of bad in his life.
Oh yeah.
He also kind of brought a lot of it onto himself. You get that in flashbacks with Hal, and with, God, why do I keep forgetting the like main
Jacob?
character? Yeah, and Jacob. Like, Jacob as his apprentice doesn't have a lot of nice things to say about Hal, and even the somewhat nice things that he has to say are really focused on, like, Hal's love of, like, comic strips, and kind of what brought him to create comics himself, right? But everything outside of that, I'm having a hard time, like, feeling sympathy or empathy for Hal. A lot of empathy for Jacob, like, having to follow this guy around, try to get him to show up to things that he never shows up to, except for, like, the one event that he gets him to, where even that doesn't go incredibly well. But
it's like, I can't really do much. he's
right.
He's doing it himself, man. I don't know.
Well, it's like, I love that you brought that up, because I was thinking about this, like, earlier today, about this book, and just about Brubaker's work in general, because I would not say that the majority of his characters are likable, and I wouldn't say that they're necessarily sympathetic. Like, it's like, you understand them, but I wouldn't necessarily say that you're always sympathizing with them. And so, like, trying to define what that actually is kind of interesting and difficult for me, because I think it's just compelling would be the word I would use. Like, there's just something magnetic about them that you just feel so drawn to them, and then, like, he's so capable of sucking you into the world and the characters and putting you in their heads. But there's so many instances where I'm like, I do not like this guy. I'm not on board with this guy, but I'm here for the ride,
Yeah.
Like,
there's definitely a lot of
then
that.
you gave me my favorite Ed Brubaker story. If, like, the rest of his stories are like this, which I'm not gonna put that broad a brush on it, but, I absolutely loved Max in Pulp. Like, Max, in my opinion, was he wasn't a good guy all the time, but it was like he was trying to atone for the sins of his past. And this one, when we're following Hal around, I don't know that he's trying to atone for the sins of his past so much, but he's trying to cover it up. He's trying to track something down to make sure that he can save face somehow, some way, right?
I don't necessarily think of it as atonement. I think that he is trying to find the one thing he was proud of and the one good thing he actually did in his life, and hold on to it as an acknowledgement in his, like, twilight years. Like, I did something. At least I did something good with my life.
Was it good? We'll get to that. We'll get to that at the end. Because the way I read it, I don't know that I. Again, all right. Well, yeah. There's more to discuss before we get there. But I have a lot of problems with Hal, and I don't know that I find any sympathy for him through any of this whatsoever. So
There's only like
I
those
think
little moments when they're like sitting at the bar and he's like, "Why don't you draw anymore? You should keep drawing. You were good." And then the dude's just like, "He told me I was shit." But it's like the one time he's sweet. He's just like, I never said that. I don't know what you're talking
you
about.
no.
shouldn't listen to
Yeah.
me.
You shouldn't listen to
Right.
me. You were good. And that's like the only nice thing really that he says.
It's like here it is. The all you get from Jacob is like, "Hey, I kind of don't like to draw much anymore because you beat me down for years."
Yeah.
And oh no, you should keep at it. It's like, what are you talking about?
It's been a little while. Like, I don't know if this is helpful context at all for this story, and it's been a little while, so I may be misremembering things. But essentially, like, Jacob is a character recurring throughout the criminal universe.
Yeah.
And his dad was an outlaw who was robbing banks and performing heists and stuff. But the character of Jacob, throughout the rest of the books, is actually a counterfeiter.
Yeah.
So he counterfeits documents, papers, bills, IDs, things to help them with heists and their escapes.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's helpful context, but that's kind of how he's transformed his art, is getting pulled into the crime world to counterfeit, which I think is that link. Which
Is this what gets us to Ricky? Ricky Lawless?
Yeah, Ricky
Dude.
Lawless is a character
Oh,
in the
dude.
criminal universe.
Oh,
It's
He's got some
amazing.
I was
great
gonna
stories.
ask that. If Ricky is a character, like you need to tell me what other books he shows up in, because I really think there is so much of Ricky that I'm like, this could go so wrong, so quick.
Right.
And he ends up not going as far as I thought he would. I love the devil mask that he wears.
Right.
I love how he breaks into the apartment, like posing as a UPS guy. All that stuff, I was just like, wow, this is he's a bad guy, but he's at least a really smart bad guy. And the relationship between Jacob and Ricky that you get talking about that, they've been friends since childhood. And I love that little tidbit that you pointed out, Kev. That like Jacob has done bad things, and they bring up like counterfeiting passes to get into cons in the past. I was like, oh my gosh, that's so brilliant.
His origins.
Yes, his origins.
I can't tell you the exact issues where there's Ricky stories. I believe it's like 1 and like 2 and then like 5 or 6. Anyway, there are, for those who don't know, and for Ben and Sam for that matter, there are 7 trade paperbacks of the Criminal series.
Yeah.
And 2 graphic novels. This is one of them. The other is called All My Heroes Have Always Been Junkies, which is more of a romance comic.
Yeah, all of these in the back of the book.
Yeah, they are all listed in the back of the book. I thought it was an interesting formatting to just like list them all out.
Yeah.
What's going on? Yeah. So you can get them, the deluxe editions, volume 1, 2, and I believe there's 3 now. I might be wrong, but of like hardcovers that like compile all of them. There's also these ones you see here: Coward, Lawless, Dead and the Dying, Bad Night, The Sinners, Last of the Innocent, and Wrong Time, Wrong Place are the 7 trade paperbacks that collect all of these criminal stories. If you have not read Criminal, this is for the folks in this chat and the people listening. Read it. It is literally like probably my favorite comic series of all time. It's amazing. It's the book I would stick in anyone's hand who's like, I don't really like comic books, or I don't read comic books. I would go, well, read Criminal and tell me you don't like comic books, because I just find it very accessible. It's just really gritty, immaculately crafted crime stories, and I think most people get a kick out of a murder mystery or a bank heist or anything like that.
Yeah.
Like, I think that those are universal stories. Like, we all like movies like Ocean's 11 or The Italian Job, or whatever. The Town is a great heist movie, right? There's so many classics in the crime genre. Goodfellas and The Godfather and the amount in Casino, like half of Scorsese's career, right? Like, he takes from all this. He loves Nick Refn, who he worked with on that Amazon show. His Pusher movies from Denmark in the 90s, those movies rock. They're just like pulp, hyper-violent crime movies about drug dealers. Really good. yeah, like just read Criminal, just read Bad Weekend, just read everything that Brubaker and Phillips have ever done. It's all amazing. Um, I'll shout it from the rooftops for as long as I have to.
They're with you,
They're
bud.
so good.
They're with
Oh, they're so good.
you.
They're so good.
Yeah. So, yeah,
Yeah, but
Lawless.
back to this book.
He's a great character. His whole family is great in this universe, I will say. So
Yeah,
That's
Ricky
a-
Lawless's dad is named Teague Lawless. There's a whole
there's a whole
issue
thing.
of
It's amazing.
of Teague back in the day before he died during a heist gone wrong.
And there's there's little comic references in those stories too. It's
And
good. It's really good.
I love this page. This panel, I just like this. I mean, these two pages together just keep pulling me back. I keep kind of coming back to stare at them with the confrontation in the bathroom. So good. And he pistol whips him.
Oh, you keep going back to that one.
I keep going back to this one, particularly this panel of him in the car at night. These like
Yeah,
really
those
messy
textures.
brush.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like,
Yep, they're really good. I
Just
love
the-
those. I feel like he's
exquisite.
using a brayer again. Maybe he recycles the same textures over and over again. I don't know. But it works, dude. It really works with those like
Jacob
sharp
Phillips,
edges
how do
and
you do
stuff.
it?
Yeah,
How do you do it?
because you
I
get
don't know.
like the
If
same
next time,
textures.
if I ever run into Jacob, like that'll be somebody that apparently somebody's gonna have to just say, "All right, we need to get this guy away from Jacob because he's bothering him way too much." I have so many questions for him.
Right.
If you love the colors in this book, which why wouldn't you? If you love the colors in Pulp, which why wouldn't you? If you want to see Jacob's own drawing style, the Einfeld Gang Massacre that's out right now is all Jacob, and it's gorgeous, and the colors are beautiful. The pencils and inks are fantastic. You can definitely see there is a family drawing. There's a style to the
Yeah.
family.
There's a house
But I
style.
know- Right, there's a
Mr.
house
Phillips
style,
family.
but Jacob does make it his own. Like there's some nice touches that he adds to his inks that I think are just kind of his way to separate himself from his dad. But again, this book, I love all the slight muted tones. I love the fact that I don't know how much fun Sean has just being able to draw random stuff. Again, creating these off characters for the pirate and the princess, and this 80s looking cartoon series that comes from a 70s style looking comic book, and the fact that he's able to in color differentiate and give it that style that Jacob is able to do, to drawing that image handout that you showed, Kev, from the con.
And the
Like
inner
there's all
pages,
these little
too.
flares and touches that come in, and these little character sketches, and it shows that like Sean can really emulate and kind of, it's his own take on different eras and
Oh,
different
dude, yeah.
print styles. Like there's one where I think he does, oh dude, yeah, I absolutely love the spaceman and like the green princess that you get on the inside cover.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just looking
There's
at this.
just so much.
Yeah, the Star King page right here.
Yes.
I mean, I feel like those are nods to Alex Toth, like the those like
100%.
show tie-ins and stuff. Ed Brubaker must have like put that in the script, be like, hey, kind of like reference some little bit of Alex Toth on that page or whatever. Especially like in the very beginning when there's like the dude shooting his gun in the background. It's like an art piece. There we go. Yeah, or no, he's not shooting his gun. He's a swordsman. I'm pretty sure that's a little nod to a Alex Toth bit character sketch.
Oh yeah. Well, one thing that I love about Toth, I mean, not about Toth necessarily, but I love about this. I mean, I love Toth, but this book's connection to Alex Toth is that the famous quote about Toth was that he was a master without a masterpiece.
Yeah.
And they directly reference that in this book as
Yeah.
well to Hal, which I mean, there's just references to all these old cartoonists as we've talked about, but particularly like the Toth one.
There's the was it the
me.
Wally Wood one that if he had to do it all over again, he'd cut his hands off or something?
Yeah, I think
like
they mentioned that directly in here too.
Yeah. They take it directly out of the dude's mouth, basically. Because I hear like the cartoonist kayfabe dude, like at Jim Rogan and Piscor talk about that as well. So
it's Wally Wood who has that very famous resource. That's like what the
the
how to
22
draw
panels.
interesting close-ups. Yeah.
It's just 22 different panels of how to draw comics, basically making it interesting. Far away, bird's eye, worm's eye, side view, profile, silhouette. It's a great resource to have like at the edge of your table or something, just to have it if you're like stuck when you're making comics and you're like, what do I need to do to make this a little bit more interesting, or maybe cheat a little bit, So definitely got some rules.
And what was the name of that book again?
Oh, which
It's not
one?
even a book. It's just like a one sheet. It's Wally Wood's
Oh,
22 panels.
22 panels, I think. I think
It's
you
called
could
like panels that always work, or
panels that always work.
Found it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, a lot of actually, as you guys are talking, and I've been flipping through with you, Kevin, and kind of reading as one does in real time. This also reminds me a lot of the stuff in Framed Ink by Marcos Matsumestre.
Yep.
Yeah,
I know what you're talking about.
yeah, which is maybe that's a bit reversed because like a lot of what he teaches comes from comics, or comes from the earlier resources and the thinking. But he also focuses on illustration as well. But for those who don't know, that book is one of probably, if somebody were to ask me what would be a book on composition that you'd recommend, because composition is a weird abstract thing, it's a very lofty concept. I'd recommend that book. And even his drawing style, I think, I really 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 love Sean's drawing just in this book. It's the kind of thing that I would imagine me trying to do if I were to do a comic, which these guys keep trying to make me do. And I think I would render. I think I would render differently. I'd play with light differently. I probably wouldn't do the loose texture that I think the way that is it Jacob, or it's he who would have done it, right? Not Sean.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in terms of the inking, yeah, this is probably like it would probably be me and my brush pen, or like a really really like rough, almost dry marker. A lot of the marks look like that. It's just something so, I don't know. You said raw earlier, Kevin, but just so sexy about that guy. It has a very noir energy to it, but I think it also has a very everything in this book, as I'm flipping through, feels like the distillation of someone who's been drawing for a while. I don't know how true that is, but like that feels true to me. I don't know how long Sean Phillips has been doing. I assume a while. But yeah, that's the book.
Yeah, Sean Phillips started drawing comics professionally when he was like 15.
Yep, there you go. Yeah, I mean, it's like you can say it's loose, but loose is not an insult, right? It's loose because yeah. Like I think of myself
like
it's precise. Yeah.
It's just enough. Like it's always just the bare minimum in the best way possible of all the exact information you need to communicate something in a panel. Like he does not go the extra mile to like noodle or add in those crazy background details. Even when he has a busier composition, like this bar shot, like there is a bar and bottles and a painting and all this kind of ornate window work and stuff, but it is still very like broad and bare bones, like in the best way.
It's like of the tradition of like chiaroscuro and that kind of like really really dark marks and stuff like that. And I should say that like for me as an illustrator, like I don't mind taking longer on those things. I don't have the finesse of someone who's been working professionally since they were 15. I'm okay with taking longer, but when there is someone with finesse, it's so cool to see, right? And the storytelling, I think, is like this is for me is what's aspirational. And I know I sculpt now, but like as a sculptor, this current project I'm working on, one reason I'm so proud of it is because I am actually expressing myself way more clearly than anything. I know exactly what forms I need. I know how to get there, and that feels awesome. Uh, and uh, and where I was gonna go? Yeah, by analogy, I'm thinking one of the reasons I consider myself a pretty good lawyer is I support C-level execs, right? And they don't have time to read an essay, and I know I talk a lot, but at work, actually, a lot of my messages are like a one sentence distillation of something that you could write like a whole essay about. And I've gotten good about understanding what the core. That's what it feels like when I see this style of drawing, which is that um, it's like you see the years, the decades, I think, in the making of every mark that's put down, which is really cool to me.
I think one thing that we've talked about on the stream before, and I'm gonna echo it again, is the ability to draw acting. You kind of talking about the storytelling was just getting my wheels turning, and how important that is for comic book artists.
Oh yeah.
And like Sean Phillips, even though he probably draws the same like 4 disdained and mournful expressions constantly throughout a 90-page book, oh, they just
Captures that
hit
mood
every
so well.
time.
Yeah, every time.
They're so good.
You can feel the pain
Well, actually,
or like the disgust or whatever in his look.
yeah. So I don't. I'm reading on my Kindle version, but I think it's around here where there's a panel where Hal is talking to her name starts with an L and I forget. Um,
Lucinda.
Lucinda, and what's his name in the background? I'm sorry. I like Ben. I already forgot the name of the main guy.
Jacob.
Thank you. Has they're on the bridge. I don't know. Oh, there it is. It's the lower left one. Do you see how very simplistic those lines are? But there's like a slight raise in the. I don't know how intentional this was on Sean's part, but it's almost like the glass is slightly tilted and it looks like he's raising his eyebrow. Almost.
yeah.
Yes.
Which fits what's going on in the panel. I was just looking over this. I was like, that's so fucking cool. Like that you're able to. Here's the thing. I would bet that Sean did not do that intentionally. But when you are good with the pen or whatever your tool of choice is, um, those things I think flow out of you like subconsciously, right? They've been sublimated, they've been internalized. Much like I like to think, if anyone's good at driving, you shouldn't be consciously thinking about driving all the time, right? It happens at an intuitive level. So for me as the reader, I look at something like this and I'm like, that's really there's so much that should not work expression wise. I think unless capable hands, that would just not look like there was any expression at all. But Jacob looks like he has a whole chapter's worth of expression in like just a few lines. That's really fucking cool.
And fun fact, we covered this when we were talking about pulp, but Jacob is just Sean Phillips. That's just what he looks like in real life
Yeah.
for the most part. So that's how he takes a lot of photo reference to quickly kind of sketch out these ideas. And yeah, that's why like you get so much expression so efficiently. It's different, I guess, in terms of Hal's stuff, but Jacob literally. If you look up a picture of Sean Phillips, like, let me see if there actually is one in the artist credit.
is
Yeah,
him.
there is.
Yeah, there's one in the bio.
Yeah, that's him. So it's just him.
Yeah.
What a cutie.
And his son looks exactly like him. You don't see it in this photo, but they are the same.
Yeah, when they're both wearing
Go on his
glasses, they look
Instagram,
the
you'll see it.
exact same.
Oh, it's so funny.
Oh God, I mean, disdain, regret, longing, mournful, being a miserable bastard.
Yeah.
That is what this book is about. It is a feeling that it's just a vibe that carries you through the entire time. Like again, that gross, not sympathetic feeling is kind of what propels you, where you're just like, something's gonna go bad the entire time, but you don't know what necessarily until the story really starts to pick up, and you don't feel good about it, but you gotta read the next page. And I think that is like so powerful.
What a magic
fascinating.
Ed Brubaker has, dude. He knows how to do
He has
it.
like a rhythm. He has a melody to his
rhythm
writing
helps.
that always like
And I
propels
feel
you
like
through.
him being a cartoonist before has helped with that. He's thinking about that page turn and that last panel on the page. You know, he wants to keep the reader engaged, to want to keep going through it, even if it is about a piece of shit. You know? And
Yeah.
to also talk about Sean Phillips' style, I feel like he's a great illustrator too. Like, we look at all the covers, especially the pulp one. He's an illustrator, he's a painter, and I feel like in a way he's thinking it like a painter when he's putting those lines down. And you know, you have to be very, you have to be thoughtful about the strokes that you put down. And when you're doing paintings, when you do old paintings, you don't want to muddy up the colors and everything, right? And mix up a whole bunch of different stuff and just make mud in a value that should be purple or whatever. So I feel like he's thinking about that stroke before he puts it down, and that's why we get those like really concise and perfect lines with, like, you know, he's just describes the dude's face in silhouette, leaves like one line on the nose or something, or the cheekbones.
Yeah.
He knows where the light's gonna hit, and then that just helps Jacob with the coloring. He knows like where that Terminator lies. He knows, like, and then also kind of breaking that idea a little bit with just putting black in the background to make the character stand out. So it's telling little white lies to tell a greater truth, you know. So he's a great illustrator, thinking about that stuff constantly, and makes it also super easy to read.
I'm reminded of how Leyendecker would like rehearse every stroke that he made, and I'm guessing Sean didn't do exactly that, you
Right.
know, but it wasn't all of that. But there is a very much like a pause arc, kind of. It's like going back, everything feels so fucking deliberate. Every mark, and it's really, yeah, and in service of, you know, I mentioned story, Kevin, as you commented on, but like it's I use story very broadly, and it includes emotion, and there's a lot. Yeah, this everything in here is really moody. It's very, yeah, it's really really great. There's I guess this is more of a Jacob thing, but to go on what you were saying, um, Manny, is even within the first few pages, I noticed that same approach applied to like specular highlights, like on the occipital ridge,
Oh yeah,
you know, of the
yeah,
eye. There's several panels like that, and like especially in the con where I'm sure it was very brightly lit. It's really really cool. But you see that with the shadows as well. In that case, that probably is Sean, is him, you know, putting down his, I'm assuming it's a brush pen or some kind of pen like that.
yeah.
I mean, I'm just looking at a panel right now where um, I'm looking at a jacket right now, and it's just, if I were to do that, I'd be like, okay, I'm just gonna like do these like weird black marks. It would just look like a jumbled mess,
Yeah,
you know?
right. I'm looking
But
at
when
some
he does it,
jackets
you're like,
now
that looks
too.
like a jacket.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that's a fucking, those are jacket wrinkles. Those are jacket folds. That's crazy.
Gets it so well, right on the money.
Yeah.
Yeah. How dare you, Sean? How dare you?
What we keep coming back to when we talk about Brubaker and Phillips is that they're just such obvious masters of the craft in a way that is amazing to experience and makes me deeply jealous and frustrated.
Right.
Just like, how do I get that good? I want to do that so bad.
Same. I'm like, I should draw like this guy, and then I just keep noodling.
It was Josh Williamson. I think I said this last week too, but just Josh Williamson like literally reads Brubaker books as soon as they come out, and he's just like Josh Williamson. For those of you who don't know, is like he's currently doing Cobra Commander at Duke for Skybound. He does most of the big heavyweight DC stuff. He's a big name in writing. Yeah, he just gets frustrated because he's like, no one's better than Brubaker. God damn it. How does he do it every time? And that's how I feel. As soon as a book comes out, I'm like, well, got to go buy that, put that on my shelf. And I just read it. I just crush it. In like, half an hour, I can crush one of their graphic novels. And then I just go, gotta do that again. And then I just start from the beginning and read it twice. Like,
gotta do it then.
It's so good.
And
I read every single one of their books twice, like when I first get it. And then odds are I'll probably come back to it and reread it again because I loved it so much.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's a super good team. And on top of the art being great and everything, Sean Phillips is also lettering this himself too. So he's leaving that space, that perfect amount of space at the top of every panel. And I'm taking notes, thinking about the lettering in this book too.
Oh,
Just
for sure. Yeah, yeah. I, I mean, it's probably
are you turning
I
into a
continue
robot,
to
Sam?
be.
Yeah, you cut out a bunch there. Repeat
Yeah,
yourself there, bud.
that's Wi-Fi. Yeah, I'm gonna say something that's probably really obvious to comic fans, but the use of lettering to change between like spoken text versus thinking versus like the past versus the present. I and the reason I know it works in a good comic is that I'm not even like the most avid comic reader, but when I read a comic, I'll go several pages and realize I'm following along, and then stop and be like, wait, how do I know when he's thinking versus when he's speaking? Like it's just
Yeah.
it's really this is the real magic trick about comics. I think is that you can even take someone like me who I did grow up with comics, I did read them, but like you don't really need to give someone a tutorial on how to read them. I think the average person who's literate would just like be able to pick up a decent, at least a pretty like well loved comic, and then just go for it, right? And I'm sure there's psychology behind that, but as myself a creator, I continue to be impressed by the craft of it.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm currently on the page. I think it's a little bit beyond, or it might be where you are roughly, Kevin. But like, just talking about the lighting that Ben was bringing up. This is one of the later scenes when they're in another bar, and that kind of like it's like a magenta lighting.
Uh-huh.
So sick.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love
Yeah,
that
yeah,
shit.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Really good. No, I think, I mean, we've talked about this before on the stream too, but just like the hidden psychology of comic books in that like placement of images, placement of words, the size of panels, always in a way that dictates how your eye is supposed to move across that page and panel,
Yeah.
how you're supposed to experience the story. One thing I've heard on podcasts with like people who don't read a lot of comics is like the question with how do you not like if I flipped and opened to this page, why does my eye not go straight here and spoil all of this? And like the answer to that is basically like if you read enough comics, you just don't even notice it or like care because the book itself is already guiding you like left to right, top down, you know? Like
Yeah.
My mind's always like, wait, you will get there.
there are certain times where you see like if this was like a panel where a character died, I literally am like this covering it with my hand.
I'm like, no,
While I'm reading
no.
because I'm like I don't want to, or like if you accidentally
Yeah.
flip too far and you go back and you're like, oh god, that guy's about to die. Hold on, like
Wait, I
you know,
missed a
or if you know
page.
that a really like nice spread is coming and you're like, hold on, I gotta make it a reveal. I wanna feel the spread when I turn this page.
And that's another
It's so
thing. You control the pacing, essentially.
Yeah. Yep.
Like that's a
I
rare
was gonna
thing.
actually say, I was gonna say the same thing, and I think even more broadly is like that at this second order level, this meta level, you the reader get to you have a conversation with how you engage with the comic, right?
Yeah.
It's something that I have found like it's like yeah, I could spoil myself, but like why do I want to, right? It's such a it's a really interesting thing because I actually am not I'm not too concerned about spoilers, even with film and TV. I find that good media, even if somebody were to tell me that something happened in the plot, like something literally, some event, like spoiler alert, Snape killed Dumbledore. I think statute of limitations passed, so I can bring that up now. It still matters to me how it unfolds.
Yeah.
Obviously, also being surprised is really cool, but that's not the only thing that I have going on. So
It's like,
like
what led to that?
part of what matters yeah, what led to that? And what is the exact unfolding? Another Game of Thrones reference is I actually knew about the Red Wedding before it happened,
Yeah.
but I didn't know exactly when it would happen. I didn't know how it would unfold. I genuinely believe that I would be at least as shocked as I actually was watching it, regardless of whether I knew what was going to happen. It was so shocking to watch, and I also had fallen in love with those characters by that point, and so
Right.
all of that came in. And so I'm not saying that I'm like going to go spoil things willy nilly for people. I respect that, but I'm just saying that for me personally, and this like shows up with comics a lot, is it took me a while. I think actually you mentioned Bone earlier. I think that was the first comic I ever got. And
Oh,
I
really?
own the entire compendium. Yeah, it's one of my favorites actually. I should go back and reread it.
Classic.
Yeah,
Sam,
it's
Sam, don't lie. Sam, that you are the way you are, and your first book was Bone. I mean, I think
my first, my
I think
first
we can
comic
draw
book.
some.
We all know that
We
you
draw
were
some
reading
parallels.
shipping yaoi on DeviantArt, and that's how you.
Oh yeah.
That's what made you gay, Sam.
Yeah, it's when people are like concerned about drag shows and drag story hour, I'm like, it's actually this specific cocktail of weird nerd shit. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and DeviantArt is always part of it. It's if you talk to any gay person, DeviantArt was part of it.
Yaoi.
Yeah, and Yaoi and Tumblr in the early years. But yeah, it's like I remember reading Bone and I first started reading books. Like I got really into fantasy books. The Hobbit was one of the first books I ever read because one of my my first grade teacher read it to us, and then I read it on my own. Then I tried Lord of the Rings. But the point is that with text, it is a lot harder. If someone would say impossible to have things spoiled for you, and you're kind of dragged along the sequence of it. Although I should say, tangent, that over the years I've learned that you actually can engage with text in a similar way to comics. Some of the fastest readers I know, they're actually scanning the text, right? It's like if there's a page where it's just describing like the person's toothbrushing routine, you don't need to like spend a lot of time on it, and you can control the pacing with that. But I think with comics, it's even more the case that one controls not just the pacing but the quality of the engagement. And if you want to spoil yourself on the story, if you're reading the comic only for the story, that's fine. There's nothing illegal about that, right? But I think that I'm more like in the middle of the bell curve, like a lot of people, where it's also the imagery, the sequencing, the framing, right?
Yeah.
Like it matters to me when a panel is larger, because I'm like, oh, this is something. I need to like sit with this for, or if it's a single page, like with just like a Murder Falcon, because I literally have like a whole bunch of screenshots of it on my page. Um, Whenever you have the one pager where like Murph is like has some epic pose, like I'm not saying no one's requiring you to sit with that, but you gotta sit with that, right? Like that's what I don't know that I feel like that's what I'm calling myself to do in that moment, and it's like it's precisely the fact that I choose on some level to engage in the way that I want that makes comics feel very personal more than I think any other medium.
Oh, yeah.
I don't care about comics. I don't even know.
I don't
Yeah,
care.
it sounds like you're not passionate at all.
Yeah.
The comics loves you. Happy Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
We
There
love
go.
you.
There it is. There's the love. And it's pink. This book is pink.
Well, going back to that love of comics, I'm just looking at this panel here. This is
Right.
autobiographical for Ed Brubaker here, is actually just reading comics all day. Yeah, because he was an army brat. He just, didn't have a lot of friends, and he just sat at home and read a lot of comics. I remember let's just stop talking about the book and to make this all about me for a second. I've had folks ask me, because I do have like a bizarre encyclopedic knowledge of the things that I'm interested in, and I've had a lot of people ask me, how do I know the things I know, and like basically what set of circumstances produced me, and like the joke is always, and it's true, that it was this. I just sat and had no friends for just chunks of my life, and just read books and watched TV and read comics. And like if you meet somebody who's super knowledgeable about stuff, odds are they had a similar experience. There's no shout out to all my lonely homies.
How dare you, sir?
There's a lot of value to spending time by yourself, just doing shit that you want to do. People ask Manny, how does he get so good at art? And it's like, because he was this kid as well, but he was drawing and not reading as many weird books as I was. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
and there's, that those circumstances are what produced us to be a writer and artist, respectively, right? Like, how do you get good at this thing? How do you learn about that thing? How do you become knowledgeable about something? You
do
just
it.
simply spend a shitload of time doing it. Like, that's it.
Yeah, an unhealthy amount, actually.
Yeah, an obsessive antisocial amount of time.
Yep. I've come to realize that later in my life.
You mean now?
Yeah, today, actually.
I was gonna say I'm right there with you. think I was one of those kids too, Kev. We probably should have been able to trade comic books, but I have a feeling I was much older by the time you were collecting your first comic books. But yeah, I threw this out in the chat. I was curious. Like my first comic, the first two comics that were ever bought for me, it was X-Men #1 by Chris Claremont and Jim Lee, and Uncanny X-Men 254. And those books are beat the heck. The covers no longer hold together. I've bought them multiple times just because I wanted to have nice copies of like my first books that were ever bought for me. But I would just lay on the floor with a notepad and just draw Wolverine or Gambit or Cyclops or Beast or Jean Grey. Although I was a kid, so I'm like, I can't draw boobies. So, you know, Jean Grey was very flat-chested, looked very dude-ish with long hair. Nope, I mean, that's not a problem. But, there you go, exactly. And that one resonated with me so much, just going through here and finding out that this character had a lot of similarities, and to see the passion that he had as a kid, and we get the same passion as Hal. Like that's the thing that connects these two characters is the passion for, you know, visual storytelling, and the things that influence them within the book. And that's where I really started to connect with the main character again, because of the you know, at this point in the story, I think we're almost 2/3 of the way through, and we're starting to talk about what Jacob's passion is, and it's like, oh, that's why he was influenced. Now I get it. Now I understand, because I can see why being around someone like Hal as you are breaking into the industry would just kill your passion for the industry. And as we're going through this, like Hal's trying to track down whatever these pages are in the book. And at the very beginning, we flip back to this so many times, but when we were looking at, you know, the space pirate guy and the princess,
Danny Dagger and Princess, yes.
You see, you know, buy Harmony Gems, or, you know, a copyright for Harmony Gems. And they mentioned this at the very beginning, that when Hal was starting out, he was the lead creative for this series. So in a lot of ways, you know, going back to what we were talking about, where so many creative people were just, the artists were left off of, you know, all the rights, all the credits for these. That's exactly what happened to Hal. And we get to the end of the book, and the whole time, like, Hal's been ducking the convention, not wanting to go to these after parties or dinners or, you know, panel discussions. But somehow or another, Jacob, and I love the fact that, you know, they bring in Ricky to, like, help them steal something, and somehow Ricky even talks his way into going to this awards ceremony.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, Jacob finally gets Hal to be like, all right, you gotta go. You
gotta
gotta
wear
go.
a suit.
Yeah. And of course, you know, to add insult to injury for what Hal's gone through in his life, the person that's going to give Hal this Lifetime Achievement Award or whatever is his old boss, Frank Harmony, who, of course, like, has not credited Hal this entire time.
Yep.
Yeah. And this is what gives me, like, the award ceremony is what gives me some of that catharsis, right? I was concerned. I'm like, you're gonna get either Ricky, who is like a known thief, and we watched what he's willing to do, show up to this place, and I'm like, this could go real bad.
Right.
And then Hal giving a speech, you're like, this could go real bad.
Right.
But everything, it's all that built up anticipation, and I was trying to think, like, how to tell how Ed has structured the story, and I'm gonna have to think about that some more. It was real easy with Pulp. I loved, like, the beats in Pulp, and there was a real, like, music to it. This one's a bit trickier for me. So what happens in the end, while it's unexpected for me, I was thinking, oh, we're going to get this huge crescendo and things are going to just hit the fan. And it's still somewhat muted. Like, there's some things that go on, and I don't know if you've got those pages up. Oh, yep, you do. You got them. But
there's
dude.
just a funny thing I think about when I was listening. It was a random podcast with Jason Mantzoukas from the league, who plays like Rafi. There's an interview with him and Mark Maron, and basically he was describing his movie The House, which is that movie where Will Ferrell and Amy Poehler start a casino in their like suburban house.
Yeah.
And like that character becomes like Jason Mantzoukas' character is like a normal like scrawny IT guy who becomes like an unhinged gambling addict through the course of the story. And Mark Maron is asking him like, oh, and then what happens? Like, do you have this like horrifying comeuppance and then you lose your house and your wife and all that stuff? And like Rafi's like, no, Mark, not every movie can be a Hal Ashby movie. And like that like destroyed me, because that's like exactly what Ed Brubaker's doing like here. Is like, this is like, not every movie can be a Hal Ashby movie, but this like every Ed Brubaker comic can be a Hal Ashby movie. You know what I'm saying? Like, they just like 70s movies ended in such a way that were always cathartic, relatively open-ended, but not happy endings.
Right.
And like I think that that's something that's missing in a lot of like modern art, and like particularly just narrative storytelling, like films and comics, where they're just like afraid to leave you feeling a little sad and mournful, wistful, longing, wanting. Like, but that's how some of the best movies of all time end. Like the 400 Blows and any movie that came out between the 60s and 70s, every noir film, none of those Humphrey Bogart movies. Casablanca, great example. That movie doesn't end with you feeling like, oh, they got away and they fell in love and everything ended just great. Spoiler
Empire
alert if
Strikes
you haven't
Back.
seen a movie that came out almost 100 years ago. Like, but
The Empire Strikes
Back is the best Star Wars movie, widely considered to be, and it ends on a downer. You don't know what's going to happen. Like,
So
don't
sad.
be afraid for your stories to be Empire Strikes Back. Like, you're not doing anything wrong by ending things sadly. And Brubaker takes that in stride. Every single one of his books, like we were saying, like, you don't feel good, but you feel like you read a great story.
Yeah.
And you just like want to pour through it again. You want to read another one. You felt something. You had an entire emotional arc reading something, and that's like got a lot of value. And again, you were just kind of building up to this, Ben, with this, like, you knew something was coming, and then he has this moment where he can take that pause and take that moment of joy by relinquishing in the good things that happened in his career and the joy he had as a comic artist.
Said,
And then he turns around and punches his editor in the face.
Fuck you.
And breaks his jaw. And it's like, there we go. That's the Hal Crane. Like this, if it ended here, if this page didn't exist, we wouldn't have bought
Just
it.
a splash page.
Yeah, if this was it, we wouldn't have accepted that as an ending. You would have been like, oh, he learned his lesson and grew as a person. No, you would have smelled that as bullshit from a mile away, and you'd been like, this book sucked. If it ended that way. No, it's gotta end this way. Like,
see, that was the thing for me, Kev. You pointed it out, like the visual storytelling and the fact that you would cover certain things that happened. Like, I turned the page and I saw this like stiff arm from Hal, and I'm like, nope, I'm covering that panel because I want to build up to this. This looks like it's something amazing is gonna happen.
Yeah, I didn't read it in a while.
Catch your eye here.
Yeah.
Yes.
I didn't read this book like for a year or whatever, and then when I turned to this page, I was just like, wait, hold on. Like, I did the same thing. I was just like, wait, I need to I need to slow down here. I was like, is that just like a thought that he's doing? I was like, oh no, he's actually punching his editor in the face. Fuck yeah, sick.
And it is one of those too where, you pointed this out. There are certain things where Ed is just sometimes, there's not a lot of happy endings, and I felt that way for Jacob, where here it is the entire time he has had to deal with this crotchety old man, and you get this catharsis, and he feels that impulse where he's got to go wrangle Hal, and what does he get for wrangling Hal? He gets freaking tased in the back.
He's like, hold on, bud, and then
Oh my gosh.
He tried.
Yeah. He did his best. He did
Yeah.
his best.
It's one thing you never
But
do is
here's-
break up a fight.
Oh yeah.
You're the one getting punched at that point.
Now we're on the page. Now I can ask my question. This is the piece that I was so confused by, and
Okay.
Ev, you mentioned it earlier. It's the fact that he's trying to find this one. Hal has been searching for this one thing that he's happy about, and I don't get that impression. So I could be wrong, but that page on the right, Jacob asks him, so what were these pages you were looking for? Like, this entire story has been trying to track down these pages of Hal's. And, Hal says, some stuff I drew back when I was working for Archie Lewis. Don't worry about it. I just made a mistake, one of many, right? But I wanted to keep this one to myself. And to me, that keep it to myself was, I don't want it to get out. It wasn't so much I love it. It's so much of it is my true shame. That was the impression that I got.
Oh no, I have the
No,
opposite.
yeah,
I have.
same.
He's so proud of it that he doesn't want it to be corrupted like everything else he owns.
Yeah, it's the one masterpiece that he considers, like, that's the thing that he truly believed in when he did it, and then he just wanted to keep that one memory.
Yeah,
but
he didn't want that to
everything
be
else was
pawned
taken.
off in the aftermarket, kind of all the shady things with counterfeits and reselling of famous art. He wanted to make sure that that didn't fall into that cycle, because then his true masterpiece would have just been, oh, the forgotten da-da-da of Hal Crane, and wow, did you know these pages would have been great. And then what would have happened if those got out, if Frank Harmony had taken those pages, he would have billed it as the forgotten masterpiece of Hal Crane after Hal Crane dies, right? And then sold that and continued to not pay Hal Crane for that shit.
Yeah.
Like, that's how I interpret that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, because that was the piece that I was trying to figure out. Like, it's the one thing that he's ashamed of, but we know Jacob is a fan of Hal's, like being able to work for him, all the conversations that we see in the book, which is what makes, in my opinion, the last 3 pages of this book my catharsis. Like, Hal got his for punching, the editor and everything, but I finally get my catharsis through Jacob in these last 3 pages.
I think what the project that he's talking about, he loved so much, and that was when his love was still alive for making comics and working with the studio before his life changed after the car accident, because we see in the beginning where he's sitting in the back of the car when Jake's driving, because he was totally scarred because his hero was driving the car. He was working for his hero, and that was the project that he worked on with his hero. And then one day, everything changes. That's why he becomes a bitter old man. That's why he hates everything. And it's just that one project that he wanted to keep for himself, and it's gone.
Yeah, and tying into that project, I mean, is the same. It's the similar circumstance where the one good moment that Jacob has with Hal in his past is when he's showing him all the cartoon strips.
Yep.
And this moment where he got these forgotten Star King pages that were, the Archie Lewis replacement pages, were likely shown in a similar way to Jacob. And he, I think he says he asked me to tear him up. Yeah. Hal had only been inking backgrounds on Star King for a month or 2 when the syndicate approached him. Archie was demanding a raise and a piece of ownership, so they figured it was time to put the old man out to pasture. Yeah. And they wanted Hal to take over the strip if they liked his samples. So for the next month, Hal worked his day job and stayed up late into the night putting together 8 weeks of dailies and Sundays. He knew he should have hated himself for what he was doing to Archie, but he didn't. In fact, he'd never been happier in his life. Even the writing came easy, as if Max King and Princess Leia themselves were telling him what happened next. He told himself maybe Archie would be happy if someone like him took over, someone who really knew and loved the strip, who could do it justice. If he could just show Archie his pages, maybe he wouldn't see them as a betrayal. But now Hal knew that wasn't true, and when someone at the agency tipped off Archie, he took Hal for a ride and drove straight into a wall.
Yeah.
So it's like that moment.
And that is like a nod or a conspiracy that people think happened with the Alex Raymond accident.
Okay.
Yeah, that's like one interpretation of it too. So, but he just changed the.
Because like you guys were saying, like when we were discussing this as a must read and review. The whole premise was there's a lot that's cribbed from real life events in the comic industry.
Yep. I think it's awesome. Like, he just
Yeah,
nerded out this whole book.
I also want to just talk about this page again that I just read.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Oh my God.
It's beautiful. Like, this is, I think, you can fact check me and flip through the book here. This is the only single page spread in this entire comic.
Yep.
And it is the totality of a moment of peace and happiness in Hal Crane's life. They want you to sit with this moment and kind of hear the story. And as you're kind of putting the pieces together through these caption bubbles, you're also just sitting in this moment. And it's a moment that's, a third of this panel is just black.
Yeah.
Like, and it's so much shadow and darkness throughout this whole thing. But it is this moment of peace and true happiness and respite before it was all taken from him and his entire life turned to the shitter. Like, this is, and it's the second to last page that you get this one moment to really soak up the entire meaning of this book. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, it's beautiful.
And then you see that his
Those
student,
pages exist. Yeah.
his student took those pages when he was super drunk and said, "Go burn these." And he's like, "I'm not gonna burn them, but I'll keep them away from you."
The true reason, subliminally,
Yeah.
that Jacob was chosen to be this ward for Hal throughout this whole story, to be his handler, was this. It wasn't actually the crime thing. It wasn't because he was liked or disliked as an assistant or could be used or abused or manipulated. It was because deep down, this moment happened between the two of them.
Yeah.
And Hal never gives an inkling that, that he would suspect Jacob of this. There's no allusion to the fact that Jacob knows that this is what this is about the entire time. It's just in that last page when they're in the cop car together.
Yeah.
Um,
It's like your dad was a thief or whatever. Is what
Right.
he said. And he's like,
Yeah.
well.
And going back to something Sam brought up, just the simple lines and being able to show expression.
Oh,
Jacob's eyes in that very last panel, I'm just like, there's so much said through like a half a face. We don't get from like the bottom lip down. We don't get any implied. There's no smile. There's no visible smile. It's all done through the eyes and like a slight cheekbone line.
Yep. And man, he nails it.
Dude, it's so good. It's
that
so good.
texture on the paper too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's good shit right there. And then like we were talking about before, this constant use of static black
Yep.
Yes.
to really just make this all pop.
Yep.
That's what I think from the muted tones, like you can definitely look and see some of the same styles that were used that were highly visible in pulp, but I think with the way that Jacob applied those colors in pulp, it was just more of the flashback, the vibrancy that you could see in the use. He's using those same techniques, but I think they're just so much more refined, and there's so much more intention in this is going to have that feel. One of the scenes earlier, you see like the answering machine light, and there's just this nice little smattering of like a roll of color that kind of backlights the red. So you can still see some of those same principles of how they apply texture. They're just much more intentional instead of stylistic, like they were in pulp.
Mm-hmm.
Again, just a powerhouse creative team. Like I know I look at the list that you showed earlier, Kev, in the back, showing all the other books by Ed and Phillips, and I like the fact that or by Brubaker and Phillips. You see there's a passion for these tales, because it's not like, oh, there's 50 different books to go out. There's 50 different books, but there's criminal, there's fatale, there's kill or be killed. Like they there are a lot of stories that they want to tell within these different universes. Now they may feature different characters, but I love the fact that they're willing to invest time to build stories in a universe, in a world. And the fact that you're saying, we get characters from Criminal, I'm like, well, heck, if there's ever the chance that I get to see Jacob pop up in another story, that gets me into, well, all right, you say he's in Criminal, I guess I'm going to have to go buy Criminal.
Oh yeah.
This is how it starts.
Right.
And you never come back.
I'm not kidding. When I read the first volume, like the first trade of Criminal, I literally like read it and then walked to my comic book store in North Hollywood and like bought the next one and then just like went back home and then like read that one and then the next day on my way to work I bought volume 3. Like I really just like kept going back.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a great layout. Sam, you're the only LA person here. Basically, I lived right next to the North Hollywood like metro stop on the Red Line, and in that main little like Main Street area.
Collector's Paradise.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. There. I actually what's crazy is that I know the shop. I still have not been. Their original location I think is in Granada Hills and it's huge, but the North Hollywood location is still quite big, right, Kevin?
Yeah, it's decently big.
Yeah.
But yeah,
But it's very well loved by the community for sure.
it's great. And I also just because I miss it so much. If you have not been, Sam, the Iliad used bookstore in North Hollywood.
Yeah.
That is
for the. Yeah, I want to explain the Iliad to people. It's huge. It's the decor is like somebody tried to capture like the Greek Athenium or something, but most importantly, there are 2 cats who live there, Apollo and Zeus, and
Yes.
they're and they're very friendly and they're very chill. But yeah, the Iliad is a very very special. I love that place.
Oh my
Very
god. It's
special
just
place.
like rooms and rooms that go on for days with stacks for every genre, and the paper in there feels like it's 100 years old and it smells like I don't know, it's the only way to describe it is it smells like old books, but it's just like oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
And
That like newsprint smell.
yes.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
And it is just magic, and I lived walking distance from all of that, and that is one thing I miss about Los Angeles. I don't miss North Hollywood that much, but I miss all the book and comic book stores.
Yeah.
Because I just lived in like a shithole area next to a 7-Eleven, basically, like 10 minutes away from the train, and that train stop was just like covered in homeless people and crime.
And crime.
Oh, it was bad, but yeah.
Dang.
By the
And
way,
we always-
I'm about to post images of me with one of the cats into general chat on the Mouthbreathers Guild Discord server.
I love it.
In the Iliad, yeah.
Oh,
As
there you
you
go.
often say, I did get some used comic books there. I got a volume of Akira there once, which was sick for like $6. But y'all, we say this most streams. I'm gonna say it again. Go to your local bookstore. Go to your local comic book store. I know not every small town's gonna have an actual bookstore, and maybe your only option is a Barnes and Noble, and that's okay, I guess. But like, go to your local bookstores. Go to your mom and pop comic shops. See what they got on the racks. Go buy something cool. Get yourself a pull list, and read comics. Like, support these businesses. Because don't buy them off Amazon, because Amazon is deliberately pricing them lower to price out those shops. Go talk to the guys,
Brick and
gals,
mortar, baby.
NB friends, agender, multi-gendered, whatever folks they got working at those comic book shops. Talk to those people. They'll give you some sweet recommendations, get you on some cool shit. Please go to comic book stores and buy comics. Read more comics, make more comics. We just love this shit. We want you to love
Yeah.
it too.
Yes.
Fine.
Fine.
And if you're curious about stuff that's going on that's coming out right now, check out other people that love to talk about comic books. I'm gonna shout out Brock the Dealer that's been on this stream the whole time. Brock does a weekly shout out to all the books that he pulls every week. go check out his stream. It's awesome. Like, you get to see cool stuff that comes out every week. And there's even more than that, because, I mean, you know, I'm shitting that Brock's a baller, but you can only buy so many books and you know, feel okay about yourself. Because at a certain point, I hit it myself. I'm like, if I had another book, like, now I feel like I got a problem. And I have a problem, because I am definitely the comic book junkie.
Same.
If I could go to a shop every week, I'd go to a shop every week. That was like the thing, but, you know, back when I was a kid. The new comic book day every Wednesday, loved it. I love being there on Wednesdays, picking out the brand new books off the shelf. And I know that a lot of us can't afford that, but I agree with what you said, Kev. Go to a brick and mortar. Go find a shop, because there's just it's everything. It's the smell, being able to pick up the book, flip through it. You know, you don't have to pick up the first one and buy the first one you pick up. Like, take your time.
Yeah, look around.
Look
That's what I did.
Look at what's out there.
The Edward McKay's used bookstore, dude. I got all my Sin City books there.
Yeah, used bookstores are great.
Yeah.
Yeah, shout out to all these places. Stick and Straw, Brick and Mortar. That's right, Brock. And you know, there's amazing shit coming out. You know, you don't have to wait 5 years until after it comes out to read something good like Bad Weekend. There's really cool shit in comic book stores right now that you should go read. The Energon universe is happening, people. Read Void Rivals.
Yeah.
Read Transformers.
I was literally
Duke,
gonna say Transformers.
Cobra Commander.
Yeah.
Those books are rad.
Ultimate
I just caught
Spider-Man.
up and binged all of them, and they're amazing.
I'm gonna steal Brock's suggestions, and I'm gonna echo those here, because I read Petrolhead. Petrolhead is so cool. Independent book. Read what is it? Our Bones Dust. Another Brock recommendation. Fantastic. Independent books are just as good as the big two,
Oh yeah.
if not better.
Oh, yeah.
Just like literally, just look at whatever James Tynion the Fourth is doing, because he's like got probably 100 comic books out right now, coming out every week. I don't know how he's doing it. He's got the Dracula book. That shit is rad. Read, you know, Nice House on the Lake. Something is Killing the Children. All these books, they're so good. There's so many great books. Saga is releasing new issues right now, right? Aren't they?
Saga's fantastic. Yes, I think that's right.
Saga's out now.
Yeah.
And you know, even if you got kids like me, because you're an old man and you have a family, there are great books out there for kids. Jonah and the Impossible Monsters by Chris Samney and his wife. That one wrapped up. You can go buy every issue right now. Zawa is coming out right now. Zawa is such a kid-friendly book, and it's wonderful to, you know, love what you love and share that with the ones that you love.
Oh, yeah.
Or simply the greatest young adult comic I've read, probably because it's the only young adult comic I've read in a long time. Do a power bomb.
Oh yeah.
Do a power bomb so good. I wouldn't classify it as young adult because I cried when I read it, but you know.
Dude, we don't.
Adults can
I don't
enjoy
want
that
to go
too.
there. We're gonna do a power bomb review. We have to.
Oh yeah.
At some point, I just didn't want to binge all of the Dan at once.
I know.
Yeah. Well, I
We've
mean,
been on our
space
Ed
it out.
Brubaker kip,
Yeah.
and one thing that I want to ask, you know, we've got some people that are listening in the chat. If you have suggestions on things that you would love us to review, give us your thoughts. Give us your ideas. I would love to hear. I mean, don't get me wrong. Manny, Kev, Sam, you all have great recommendations, and we still have tons of stuff that we're going to cover ourselves. But there may be something that somebody else out there is like, you need to check this out. We're open to it. Let us know.
For sure.
Like, and that's also why you should, you know, like your LCS we were talking about. The Energon universe was something where I was like, you know, I don't really care about G.I. Joe. I don't, you know, toys are cool or whatever. It's just not been my thing. But my LCS man at Acme Comics, Jermaine, just did not stop talking my ear off about how that was going to be the new thing. And that was the thing to be a part of.
Void Rivals? Have you finished Void Rivals yet, Kev?
Yeah.
All right, I get to borrow that next, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, next time I see you, you can take all my issues. I will say, okay, this is going to be my controversial take. It's the weakest by far of the Energon universe. It's cool. The ship designs are great. Kirkman does a thing that he kind of only gives you a little bit each time. He just gives you the breadcrumbs.
Dude,
it doesn't
really
feel
does.
like
He really does.
And he did
You
that
gotta-
with
you
Walking
gotta
Dead
build
too.
your
Oh,
list.
he
I've
did that
never
in
read
Walking Dead
in-
so hard,
yeah.
dude.
where he gives you just enough to be like, and I'm just gonna edge you, and you're never gonna come. Basically, like for issues on end.
But that's
And like,
that's why he's good at that. Because then you can go to Cobra Commander, you can go to Duke, you can go to oh my god, Transformers by D Dubs. Like there, you want a handy? You want like a quick handy? Like go read those books. So I'm fine if Void Rivals is gonna be my slow edging burn. Like allow me to do tantric stuff. Because the other books, oh my gosh, they're kicking.
oh, Duke is so much fun. Manny, Duke is like the Rambo sequels, not First Blood, the other ones.
Dude, yes.
What I love is
It's just like
that
guys on a mission being buff.
Oh.
Like, you know,
Yeah.
Yeah,
rad.
beef bros, dude. Let's
You-
do this.
and the Duke like issue 1 directly references a Transformers issue as well. So it just all spins. It all ties together.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
And then like the Cobra Commander book is just like it's gonna be a 4-issue mini, just about like his position in all this, and basically like I won't spoil it. I don't want to spoil it. We gotta, but it ties into it. It ties into what happens in issue 4 of Transformers.
Oh wow. Okay.
It's Ben. Have you read it yet?
I'm. This is how bad I read Cobra Commander. I read Duke. I read the first 2 issues of Duke. I have not. I picked up issue 4 of Transformers when we were at Acme. I have not read that yet, and I am such a D-Dubs fan. And you know, I kind of have been busy drawing pages for our anthology, so I'm gonna blame it on that.
Sure.
But you know,
can't take the 10 minutes out of your day to read a 20-issue single, or a 20-page single. That's
Yeah.
fine.
I had to check out cool new stuff too, so I'm getting there.
It's true. No, it was just literally the day we came back from Acme, Ben, on that Saturday. I just read every Energon book, just like in succession.
Just devour it.
Oh yeah, like how many is that? It's like 13 or 14 issues, just straight. I gotta go. I don't have a pull list because I'm dumb, but I need to go to the store near me and pick up Ultimate Spider-Man 2, and then Transformers 5, and the Duke is coming out this week, I think. I might just wait till the end of the month and just grab everything.
Set up a pull list. You know, reach out to our buds at Acme, or reach out to somebody at Ultimate. I'm certain Ultimate would be happy to set you up a pull list.
They ask me if I have a pull list every time I go in. They're just like, "You come here. Where's your pull list?" And I'm like, "No."
They ask me the same thing, but you know,
I try
I
not
don't get
to
that same
support them.
recognition.
Honestly, like I've spent a lot of money there. I'm gonna be upfront, but ever since they said they would, you know, they didn't say anything about our Renowned Comics, but they just never got back to us.
Oh, I was
haven't
flat out
heard
told
great
no.
things.
I was flat out told no, so it's all
Oh
good.
yeah. We sent them emails. They just like kind of gave us the runaround and then never got back to us. Yeah. So maybe I'll set up a list with Capital Comics in Raleigh for all my Triangle folks. They're off Glenwood Avenue.
Field trip.
They're a good store. It's very cluttered. Man, you remember that store, right?
Oh yeah, it's packed.
Yeah. It's like literally like the aisles are like less than the width of your body, so you have to just kind of shimmy around. And they also like they bag all their trades, so you can't even like open them and flip through them, which
Yeah.
is kind of annoying.
That's bad.
But like you also know what you're getting into. I think it's just because small shop, got to protect the merchandise. Very small shop, but it's
Yeah.
cool. The guys are really nice. And then there's also what's it called? Foundation's Edge.
I think it's Foundation's Edge. Is that off Hillsborough Street?
Yeah, off Hillsborough Street in Raleigh.
Yeah.
Horribly organized, very chaotic and cluttered.
It's very.
The guy who works there is very cool.
He's a cool guy.
They have a good selection in there. It's just it's just gonna take you a while to find what you're looking for.
Yeah, he let me. He let us put some Renowned books out. So, and I haven't gone back in a long time. So,
Yeah.
but
Again, support your brick and mortars.
yeah,
I just live so close to Ultimate, and it's right next to the donut shop.
it's
And I need more
true,
comics and donuts.
It is
I still need to make know where to get the donuts.
dude. Yeah.
Sam, you'll appreciate this. There is a donut store right next to both locations of Ultimate Comics in Raleigh that is exactly like LA donut shops, down to the Korean women behind the counter, like
100%.
straight up.
Yeah.
Like all of the same cake donuts, like your old fashions, your Bear Claws, your glazed, your basic stuff, not like Krispy Kreme donuts, like those thick, cakey donuts. Then in the cooler, they got the Martinelli's apple juice and like the bottles of orange juice and stuff. And it's just the exact same. It's the exact same. They're just missing like the stickers with the pictures of the donuts on the windows.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it is just an LA donut shop, like in Raleigh, just confusingly so.
That's great.
Oh, the best.
There's one
That
dude just
there
like
were not LA donut shops elsewhere in the world. I don't know if that makes sense. Like growing up in LA, I was surrounded by them, and then I moved to Houston, and it was really hard to find a donut shop like that.
oh
The
dude,
closest
yeah.
thing was Shipley's Donuts, and you had to travel like half an hour out of town.
That's so weird
to
that
get
people
it.
don't love donuts everywhere else. It's insane. I don't get it.
That's
It is.
it's an LA thing specifically, which I think is crazy.
What?
Uh,
It's
yeah,
a
like,
beautiful, perfect little thing to put in your mouth and then devour it.
look, there are trade-offs. Okay,
Now we're gonna
Doesn't have
start
Waffle
talking
House.
about putting stuff in people's mouths. Apparently we need to start donut live streams and do donut
Dude,
reviews.
donut
Yeah,
reviews.
I'll do a baker's dozen mukbang, and I'll just eat a whole bunch of donuts on camera.
It's good. Yeah, that's it.
That donut is good, and then just eat the next one. That donut is really good. Yeah, no,
That's
it's
great.
sick. But no, that's my brief aside about donuts. One last thing is just the whole stereotype about cops liking donuts is because all movies and TV shows are shot in LA, where everyone just eats donuts.
Everyone eats the
That's
donuts.
That's not even like imagine if all film and TV was shot in Chicago, like or Houston or any other major city. Like the donut stereotype would literally not exist. Like
Right.
that's
It'd be
crazy.
pizza.
Yeah, it'd be deep dish pizza or whatever those freaks in the Midwest eat.
I take personal offense to that.
Shout out to all my homies in the Midwest.
Oh,
I just
hey,
love-
what? Oh,
Well,
no,
what
go for
comic?
it.
What comic are y'all reviewing, or I guess we are reviewing next week?
Oh, good question. We wanna end this and then talk about next week.
Brock, they eat
Oh,
ranch
fine.
dressing and that's it.
Hey, we do not all eat ranch dressing in the Midwest.
We eat butter ranch.
It's homemade buttermilk ranch.
Yeah.
We dip
It's the real stuff.
corn in it,
Yeah.
and we eat corn.
Come on,
Yeah.
guys. Get it straight.
Any suggestions?
I got
Well,
a list.
Again,
right
do we want to keep it a secret and talk about it off? Are you guys still streaming?
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
still
s-
streaming.
I'm still streaming.
All right.
Too.
You want
I
to
mean,
wrap it up and
Yeah, we can do that.
All right, y'all. Brock, always good chilling. Anybody else is in the chat? All 6 of you, 5 of you. Thanks for hanging out, talking comics. We'll be back next week, same time, same place.
Oh yeah,
Talking comics.
right
Hell
here
yeah.
on the
That
internet.
weekend. Ed Brubaker, Sean Phillips, Mouthbreathers Guild. Show us some love. This
Yeah.
video will also go up on YouTube.
That's true.
All right, y'all. I'll see y'all later.
Peace.
bye.